She panicked on her first flight and grabbed the wrong thing, his lap. He laughed, she ran. But when she starts her dream job in a new city, the man from that humiliating moment walks in as her billionaire CEO. And he remembers everything. Before we dive into this unforgettable journey, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? If stories about love, sacrifice, and second chances speak to your heart, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we're bringing you another powerful story you won't want to miss. Livia clutched the armrests like her life depended on it. Her knuckles turned white, her breath came in short, uneven bursts, and sweat pooled at the base of her neck. It was her first time on a plane, ever. And judging by the way her stomach kept flipping, she was already convinced it would be her last. "Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth," she whispered to herself, eyes squeezed shut. "Think happy thoughts, beaches, kittens, Wi-Fi that actually works." The seatbelt was her next enemy. She pulled it, twisted it, then somehow managed to tangle it around the strap of her backpack. Her fingers fumbled, nerves hijacking logic. By the time she looked down, it looked more like she was tying knots than securing herself for flight. A voice interrupted her panic. "Excuse me, I think that's my seat." She looked up, already apologizing, but the words froze in her throat. The man standing next to her was like something out of a movie. Tall, tailored navy suit, jawline you could cut paper on, dark hair slicked back just enough to look both professional and dangerous. His cologne hit her next. "Oh yes, sorry," she stammered, tugging at her backpack. Of course, it was stuck. She yanked once, twice, and on the third attempt the strap finally gave. But she lost her balance, crashing her shoulder into him and nearly toppling over. "Great, just great," she mumbled, quickly shoving her water bottle back into her bag like it was contraband. He chuckled, a low, amused sound that made her face heat up even more. "First time flying?" he asked, taking the seat beside her. "Obvious," she muttered, trying to hide behind her hair. "A lucky guess," he said with a smile. The flight attendant passed by, checking seatbelts. When she saw Livia's situation, she offered a kind smile and helped her buckle in. Livia muttered a thank you, cheeks burning with secondhand shame. "It's just a plane," the man said calmly. "Statistically, the chances of crashing are—" "Don't finish that sentence," Livia blurted, hands shooting up to her ears. He laughed again. Okay, just kidding. You'll be fine." But she didn't feel fine. Not when the engines began to roar. Not when the aircraft rumbled forward, and especially not when the wheels lifted off the ground and the familiar laws of gravity decided to take a vacation. The plane lurched, her instincts kicked in. Her traitorous, panicked hand flew straight onto the nearest object for support. His lap. For 2 agonizing seconds, she didn't register what she had done, only that it was warm, soft, not an armrest. She looked down. He looked down. Their eyes met. Her face ignited. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry," she gasped, yanking her hand back as if she'd touched a live wire. "I didn't mean, I wasn't thinking, turbulence, reflex, I swear." He was trying not to laugh. "Well, usually people offer me coffee first." She covered her face. "Can someone please just open the emergency exit? I need to jump." "At least now you're loosening up," he said, adjusting his blazer with a teasing grin. She sank back in her seat, mortified beyond repair. Her heart was beating so fast she was sure the guy could hear it. Silence settled between them as the plane leveled out, but inside her, the storm only grew. She kept her gaze on the window, her hands gripping the sides of her seat like she might float away at any moment. Her mind screamed, her cheeks burned, her soul begged for a rewind button. And then, she snapped. Unbuckling her seatbelt, she stood, stumbled into the aisle, and speed-walked straight to the airplane bathroom without looking back once. Inside the cramped airplane bathroom, Livia slammed the lock shut and leaned against the door, her chill rising and falling in rapid bursts. Her reflection in the mirror stared back at her, wide-eyed, flushed, and on the verge of total collapse. "What did I just do?" she whispered, gripping the tiny sink. "Why does this stuff only happen to me?" She paced the tiny space, bumping into the door, the counter, the wall. Her brain raced through 100 scenarios, none of which involved ever facing that man again. It's fine. The flight will end. I'll disappear. I'll change my name. I'll move to Canada. A knock startled her. "Eh?" came the familiar voice, muffled but unmistakable. "You okay in there?" Her eyes widened. No, that voice? Here? Yes, she shouted, too loud. Totally fine. Super fine. Great. Another jolt of turbulence. And then, chaos. The door, which hadn't latched all the way in her panic, burst open, and David, yes, that was his name, she had caught it on the airline ticket tucked in his jacket, stumbled inside, trying to steady himself as the plane swayed. "Oh no," Livia breathed. "Sorry," David said, quickly trying to back out, but it was too late. The space was too small. His hand landed on the wall to brace himself. The other? Accidentally at her waist. Be worthy, practically nose to nose. "He swear this isn't my fault," he murmured, breathless from trying not to laugh. "I know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Neither of them moved. Her hand was still on his shoulder. His eyes were locked on hers, and, despite every fiber of logic in her brain screaming otherwise, she said it. "You know what? Just kiss me. If this plane goes down, at least I'll die with a story." David blinked. Then he smiled, that same crooked, dangerous, unfairly attractive smile. And then it happened. A kiss. A kiss that started too fast, too clumsy, too much, in a tiny bathroom that smelled vaguely like mint and terror. But then it deepened. Warm, electric, like all the turbulence from earlier had nowhere to go but through their lips. His hands were steady now, confident. Hers were tangled in the lapel of his jacket, and for a moment, ridiculous, cinematic, unforgettable moment, they forgot everything. Until the knock. "Excuse me," said the flight attendant from the other side. "Is everything all right in there?" They sprang apart like startled teenagers. "Fine plumbing inspection," Livia shouted, voice breaking. David straightened his blazer, trying not to laugh as he reached for the door. He turned back to her with a grin. "Well, definitely not your average first flight." "Please don't ever speak of this again," she whispered, face still burning. He winked. "We'll see." Back at their seats, she curled up against the window, avoiding all eye contact. She didn't say a word, neither did he. But the space between them buzzed. When the plane landed, she didn't wait for instructions. Before the seatbelt light was even off, she grabbed her backpack, whispered a frantic bye, and bolted down the aisle like she was being chased by the FBI. David watched her go, arms crossed, lips slightly curved. "Definitely the most interesting passenger I've ever met," he said quietly. Outside the terminal, Livia finally stopped running. Camila, her best friend, stood beside the car holding a cardboard sign that read, "Welcome to Chaos." Livia collapsed into her arms without a word. Camila blinked. "That bad?" Livia whispered, "I kissed a stranger in a plain bathroom." Camila stepped back, jaw dropped. "You what?" Livia groaned, sliding into the car. "Just drive, please. I never want to see that man again." Camila grinned. Sure, but fate? It has a wicked sense of humor." And somewhere far above, so did the universe. The New York skyline was still unfamiliar to Livia as she stood in front of the massive glass tower, gripping the strap of her shoulder bag like it was a lifeline. Her stomach twisted with nerves. First day of her new job, new city, new life. And absolutely no chance of ever seeing the man from the airplane again. Zero. She'd made sure of that. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and stepped into the marble-lined lobby. Everything sparkled. Floor, ceiling, even the air seemed richer. She walked to the receptionist with her most professional smile. "Hi. Livia Souza. I'm one of the new hires for the IT department." The receptionist smiled. "Welcome, Ms. Souza. Please head up to the 25th floor. The orientation session is about to begin." "Thank you," Livia replied, heart pounding. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, she found a group of new employees gathered in a sleek conference room, murmuring nervously. She slid into an empty seat near the end of the table, smoothing her skirt and exhaling slowly. "It's fine," she told herself. "You're here for work, focus, no drama." Then the door opened. A hush fell over the room as footsteps echoed in. She didn't look up at first, too focused on pretending to be calm, but then the voice spoke. "Good morning, everyone. I'm David Miller, CEO of the company. Welcome." Her heart stopped. No, it couldn't be. She lifted her eyes. It was him. David. The man from the airplane, from the bathroom, from the kiss, standing in front of her, in a charcoal suit, in charge. Time froze. So did her lungs. Her eyes widened, her breath locked. She sank lower into her chair, praying he wouldn't notice her. But he did. In the middle of his welcome speech, his gaze swept across the room and landed on her. The eyes locked for a second too long. His words caught just slightly. His jaw flexed, but then he continued, recovering smoothly. "Some of you will be joining marketing, others in finance, development, and of course IT." Livia wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. She was trying to convince herself this was just a cruel twist of fate when the assistant began calling names to assigned department. Livia Souza. She stood, legs shaky, head spinning. As she approached the front, David adjusted his suit and offered a neutral smile, his hand extended. "Welcome," he said, voice calm, but his eyes sparkled with amusement. She stared at his hand for a beat too long, then shook it. The contact sent a jolt through her chest. "Thank you," she managed to say, voice tight. He held her hand half a second longer than necessary. "You'll be working on my floor, the tech team's there." Her heart dropped. "Perfect, of course." She nodded and walked off as quickly as possible. When the session ended, she took the elevator with a few others, still dazed. The IT department was located on the executive level. Great, just her luck. Lucas, a friendly analyst, greeted her as she stepped in. "New blood, welcome to the chaos." "Thanks," she said, forcing a smile as he handed her a company badge. Her desk was close to the hallway, close enough to see the glass wall of David's office. She turned away and stared at her monitor. "Don't think about him. Don't look at him. Pretend he's not even here." Back at the apartment that night, Camila was waiting with popcorn and curiosity in her eyes. Her first day. How was it? Anyone cute? Livia dropped her bag on the couch and covered her face. "I work for him." Camila blinked. "Him?" "The guy from the flight." Camila gasped. "No, wait." Livia nodded miserably. "He's the CEO." Camila burst out laughing. "Girl, this is fate's idea of comedy." "This is fate's idea of a breakdown," Livia groaned. "We're on the same floor, and he remembered me." He smiled, like he knows something I don't. Camila's grin widened. "And maybe he does." The next morning, Olivia walked into the office with her head held high and her heart pounding like a drum. She'd stayed up half the night convincing herself that she could handle this. She wasn't a teenager with a crush, she was a professional. She belonged here. She sat at her desk, pulled up the company systems, and got to work. The morning passed with minimal distractions until the internal phone on her desk lit up. She hesitated. The caller ID read, David Miller. She swallowed hard and picked it up. "Support, this is Livia." His voice came through, calm but with a lilt that she now recognized as teasing. "Hey Livia, I think I've lost connection on my end. Could you come take a look?" She blinked. "Of course, I'll be right there." Hanging up, she stood slowly, smoothed her blouse, grabbed her laptop, and walked down the hallway. David's office door was slightly ajar. She knocked once, and he looked up. "Come in," he said, standing beside his desk. His office was all sleek lines and glass, with a sweeping view of the skyline. He gestured toward the corner of the room. "Laptop's over there. It just—" Livia knelt by the device and opened it. One glance at the screen told her everything was working perfectly. Her eyes narrowed. "You disconnected it on purpose." David smiled. "Guilty." He leaned against the edge of his desk, arms folded. "I wanted to see how you were doing. That's all. If you could have just emailed." He tilted his head. "Where's the fun in that?" She closed the laptop and stood. "You know, we probably shouldn't be— whatever this is. I work here now," he said, stepping closer. "But for the record, I haven't forgotten anything about that flight. Not a single second." Her breath caught. "That was a mistake. I was panicked. It wasn't real." His voice dropped lower. "Felt real to me." She stepped back. "You're my boss. You're more than just another employee." Livia didn't know what to say. The walls around her heart were rising fast, but he kept slipping through the cracks. "I need to get back to work," she said quietly. David nodded, his eyes still locked on hers. "Of course, but if my internet goes down again, you'll come, right?" She rolled her eyes and turned to leave. "Only if the chair is ergonomic enough." He laughed behind her, and she hated how much she liked the sound of it. Back at her desk, Lucas gave her a sidelong glance. "That was quick. Everything working?" "Perfectly," she said, typing something just to look busy. Lucas grinned. "Good, because I swear, he's had more IT issues this week than the entire floor combined." She didn't answer, but her cheeks warmed and her fingers trembled slightly on the keyboard. This was dangerous. It was reckless. But part of her wasn't just remembering that kiss in the airplane bathroom. Part of her was wondering what it might mean if he remembered it too. And something in his eyes told her he absolutely did. The morning started like any other. Coffee in one hand, laptop in the other, Livia walked into the IT department and settled at her desk. Her inbox was full, her to-do list long, but she welcomed the routine. After everything that had happened, normalcy felt like a gift. Until the alerts began. A small notification blinked on her screen, then another, and another. One glance at the server panel made her heart race. It wasn't just a glitch. It was movement, unusual, rapid, and coming from external sources. Livia sat up straighter and pulled the main network monitor onto her screen. Code was pouring in at an alarming rate. Unauthorized access attempts, multiple IPs, simultaneous threads trying to break into the company's firewall. "This isn't just strange," she whispered. "It's an attack." She flagged Lucas, who rushed over, frowning as he scanned the data. "Tell me that's a simulation," he said. "It's not. We're being hit hard. These aren't random bots. Someone is targeting our core system." Other IT analysts gathered around, their faces pale. "You're in the perimeter zone," one of them said. "We're 10 minutes away from a breach." Livia didn't hesitate. "Everyone, disconnect your consoles and back away." Lucas blinked. "Wait, what?" "Trust me," she said. "I need to take full access control." The team moved aside. Livia activated a high-level admin override, something only a few at the company even knew existed. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She shut down the inbound gateways and rerouted traffic through a decoy loop she had created during a personal side project. "What are you doing?" Lucas whispered. "Building a trap," she replied. She diverted the malicious requests into a sandbox server that mimicked the real environment. It bought her time. Then she isolated the sensitive files, contracts, patents, proprietary systems, and transferred them into a quarantined space deep inside the company's cold storage. Straightened up really quickly. "Trying to find the path," she muttered. "Let's make them think they already did." Every click, every command was a race against a ticking clock. Her eyes scanned incoming threats faster than most people could read headlines. When one backdoor route popped up, she slammed it shut before it fully formed. Then the code slowed. One line vanished. Then 2, then 10. The screen began to stabilize. Connections were being dropped. Livia sat back, fingers trembling, pulse roaring in her ears. "It's over," she whispered. Lucas stared at her. "You just saved the company." She let out a slow breath. "Let's hope the CEO agrees." Unbeknownst to her, David had already been alerted. He arrived at the department seconds later, flanked by 2 directors. He looked around the room and immediately found her, still at her desk, her hands hovering above the keyboard. "What happened?" he asked. Lucas stepped forward. "We were under attack, a serious one." David's gaze shifted to Livia. "Stopped it," Lucas added. "All of it. Isolated the files, neutralized the threat in under 15 minutes. David's eyes met hers. He took a step closer. "You did all that?" Livia stood slowly. "I saw a vulnerability in the perimeter. It wasn't standard protocol, so I used one of my personal defense scripts." He crossed his arms, visibly impressed. "You rewrote our defense protocol in real time?" "Improvised," she said, trying not to sound as breathless as she felt. David turned to the directors behind him. "Take a note. I want a full report on what happened, and I want it led by her." Livia blinked. "Wait, me?" he said without missing a beat. "You saved our company." Yes. Livia sat at her desk later that afternoon, still trying to calm her nerves. The adrenaline had faded, but the memory of David's praise hadn't. She could still hear his voice, firm, impressed, and something else she couldn't quite name. Respect? Admiration? Something more. The entire floor had been buzzing since the attack. IT analysts who barely nodded to her before now glanced her way with something like awe. Lucas walked by, handed her a bottle of water and said, "Hero of the day," with a smirk. "I was just doing my job," she muttered. "No, you rewrote half the company's security in real time," he corrected. "Don't downplay it." Before she could argue, a message pinged on her internal chat system. "David Miller, you free tonight? Dinner to celebrate your brilliance." Livia stared at the screen. Her heart jumped, then sank. Dinner. With David. She bit her lip and hovered her fingers over the keyboard. The memory of that kiss, awkward, unexpected, electric, flashed through her mind. She didn't know what this was between them. She wasn't sure if she was imagining it or if he really felt it too. Her cursor blinked as she typed. "There for the offer, but I think I should keep things professional." She stared at the words, pressed backspace, deleted the entire line. Typed again. "Maybe another time." Deleted that too. She whispered. "Why is one text message harder than blocking a cyber attack?" That night, at home, Camila greeted her at the door with a tub of ice cream in one hand and a triumphant look on her face. The hasty Camila said, skipping the hello, "How does it feel to be a legend?" Livia dropped her bag and collapsed onto the couch. Camila handed her a spoon. "You're on the front page of the company's internal portal. Lucas posted the screenshot of the code you wrote. People are calling you the Firewall Queen." Livia covered her face. "Oh no." "Oh yes," Camila replied, plopping beside her. "So, did he say anything, the boss?" Lee hesitated. "He sent me a message." Camila's eyes widened. "What kind of message?" "Dinner. He asked if I wanted to celebrate." Camila nearly squealed. "And what did you say?" Your wife said. "I didn't reply." Camila threw a pillow at her. "You saved his company and he's asking you to dinner and you didn't reply?" "I didn't know what to say," Camila said firmly. "That's what you say? Yes. Then you go. You wear your good lipstick. You eat something expensive. You let yourself enjoy being adored for a minute." Livia chewed her lip. "It just feels like a bad idea. He's my boss. But also clearly into you. And you're allowed to feel things even if you're good at your job." Livia sighed and pulled her laptop onto her lap. The chat window still blinked, unread. She typed, "Livia Souza. Okay, dinner sounds nice." She hit send. Instantly, the 3 dots began to pulse on his end. Camila peeked over her shoulder. "Oh, He's been waiting. Livia stared at the screen, her heart thumping harder than it had all day. David Miller, I'll pick you up at 7, wear whatever makes you feel dangerous. She blinked, then laughed. Camilla, she whispered. Think I'm in serious trouble. Camilla grinned. Finally. The next morning, the entire company buzzed with something Livia couldn't quite name. Maybe it was energy left over from the day before, or maybe it was just her imagination. Either way, she couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming. And she was right. Around mid-morning, she noticed David pacing the hallway outside his office, phone pressed to his ear, brows furrowed, jaw clenched. He wasn't his usual calm, composed self. Something was clearly wrong. Lucas leaned over from his desk. He's been like that since 7. I think something's off. Livia nodded. A few minutes later, she passed David's office and caught part of his conversation. I need someone fluent, German, business level, not a translator off some website. I need someone I trust. He hung up with a heavy sigh and tossed the phone onto his desk. Papers were scattered across the surface. His suit jacket was slung over the chair, sleeves rolled up. Later, while on a call with her cousin in Germany, Livia stood near the break area, speaking effortlessly in rapid, fluent German. Ich habe es gestern überprüft. Ich rufe dich später zurück, okay? David was walking past when he froze, mid-step. His head turned slowly toward her. Livia ended the call and looked up just in time to see that stunned expression on his face. Speak German? He asked, walking toward her. She blinked. Yes. I lived there for almost 2 years during college. My cousin still lives in Munich. He stared at her like she'd just revealed a hidden superpower. You speak fluent German? She nodded, confused. Why? David exhaled, then gave her a look that was both relieved and intensely focused. Because I have a $1 billion meeting in Berlin tomorrow, and the entire deal is being stalled over translation issues. You may have just saved me, again. She frowned. What do you mean? I want you to come with me, he said. Germany? Livia laughed nervously. You're joking. I'm very serious, he replied. I trust you, and after what you pulled off with the network, you've already proven you're more than capable under pressure. Wait, I'm not an interpreter, You're not just anything, he said. She stared at him, torn between logic and the way her chest was beginning to flutter. It's a 10-hour flight. Together. He nodded. Livia's mouth opened, then closed. You're unbelievable. David smiled. That's what makes me interesting. By evening, her suitcase was half-packed, her mind in complete chaos. Camilla sat cross-legged on the bed, watching her toss blouses and anxiety into a pile. Is this insane? Olivia groaned. I'm flying to another country with a man I kissed in a bathroom. Camilla sipped tea, unbothered. A very rich, very charming man who just asked you to be his right hand in a $1 billion deal. Livia sat down. What if I mess up? What if I panic again? Camilla leaned forward. You're not the same girl from that plane. You've saved his company, twice. If anyone can do this, it's you. Livia stared at her. Why are you always right? Camilla shrugged. It's a curse. That night at the airport, David met her at the gate wearing a tailored coat, crisp shirt, and just the right amount of confidence to make her want to turn around and run the other way. I came, he said, smiling. I said I would, she replied, adjusting her bag. His eyes softened. I'm glad. The plane ride was 10 hours of silence, stolen glances, and unspoken tension. Livia sat by the window. David took the seat beside her, his presence a gravity she couldn't ignore. He had brought reports, charts, investor bios, but she noticed he barely looked at them. His focus drifted toward her whenever he thought she wasn't looking. She tried to distract herself with the in-flight movie. She couldn't focus. Every time the turbulence jolted them, her body tensed, and every time, David glanced her way like he remembered exactly what happened the last time they were mid-air together. You okay? he asked, when one sharp drop made her grab the armrest. She nodded, forcing a breath. I'm fine. David leaned closer. We're just over the Atlantic. Most of the turbulence is behind us. She tried to smile. Good. I'd like to survive this flight with my dignity intact. He chuckled. Dignity is overrated. Sometimes chaos makes things unforgettable. Their eyes met. That charged moment stretched again. Neither of them moved. Livia looked away first. When they landed in Berlin, the city greeted them with a cool drizzle and gray skies, but Livia barely noticed. Her nerves were focused on the investor meeting David had mentioned. She wore a fitted black blazer over a cream blouse, her hair swept back in a low bun. David adjusted his cufflinks beside her as they stood outside the tall glass building. You ready? He asked. Livia exhaled. Let's find out. Inside, the meeting was intense. A dozen German executives sat around a polished table, their expressions unreadable. Charts were displayed, contracts pulled up, numbers negotiated. David opened the pitch, confident as always, but when the dialogue turned full Gurmit, he stepped back. That was Livia's moment. And she rose to it. Her voice was steady, her accent flawless, her translations crisp and immediate. Not just words, but tone, intent, nuance. She answered technical questions, reframed objections, negotiated clauses. For an hour, she owned the room. By the time the papers were signed, one of the investors turned to David and said, "If she ever leaves IT, we'll take her." David smiled. "She's not going anywhere." As they exited the building, he looked over at her. "You were extraordinary." Livia blinked, flushed. You weren't just anything," he interrupted gently. "You were brilliant." That night, under a canopy of cafe lights strung across a quiet Berlin street, they shared dinner. Wine glasses clinked, laughter came easily, and for once, there was no need for translation. When she laughed at one of his rare, dry jokes, David leaned forward. "You know," he said, "I've thought about that kiss." Livia nearly choked on her wine. "David, I don't regret it." She swallowed, heartbeat climbing. "It was a mistake." "Yo," he said quietly. "It was the first thing in a long time that felt real." She looked at him, really looked. The man who once seemed larger than life now looked vulnerable, human, honest. "Then what would this be?" she asked. He reached across the table, fingers brushing hers. "This would be intentional." Then, without asking, without rushing, he stood, she followed, and on that quiet street, beneath the soft glow of city lights, David cupped her face with reverence and kissed her. At this, consciously or unconsciously, David cupped her, not like a surprise, but like a promise. The moment Livia stepped back into the New York office, it felt like the bubble had burst. Gone were the candlelit streets of Berlin and whispered promises under cafe lights. In their place, fluorescent bulbs, buzzing monitors, and the cold air of office reality. Still, her heart carried the warmth of that kiss. She smiled at her desk, opened her laptop, and for a brief second, let herself believe the impossible. That maybe, just maybe, this thing with David was real. That belief shattered before noon. She was finalizing a report when the elevator doors opened with a sharp ding. A woman stepped into the office like she owned the floor. She was tall, severe, and dressed in black from head to toe. Her heels clicked against the tile with ruthless precision. She didn't stop to ask for directions. She walked straight toward Livia. "You're Livia," the woman said, her voice cold, sharp. Livia stood slowly. "Yes. Can I help you?" The woman's lips curled, but it wasn't a smile. "I thought you should know," she said, eyes narrowing. "David Miller is my husband." The words landed like a punch. Livia blinked. "I'm sorry?" The woman crossed her arms. "You heard me, my husband, so whatever fantasy you're living, end it, now." And confused, humiliated, Livia's heart thundered. She took a breath. "I think there's a misunderstanding. Isn't the woman snapped. "You're just the latest." With that, the woman turned and left, leaving the entire office in stunned silence. Livia felt every eye on her. Her skin burned. She grabbed her things and walked out without a word. The cool air outside slapped her cheeks. She turned down the block, trying to breathe, trying to think, trying not to cry in front of a dozen strangers passing her on the sidewalk. Her phone buzzed. "David." She ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. She finally picked up on the fourth ring, voice shaking. "Where are you?" he asked. "You lied to me," she said, trembling. "I can't believe I was so stupid." "Hurry up." "Your wife came to the office." Silence. Livia stopped walking. "She called you her husband." "And are you married?" "No more nuances," Nora continued. "We're divorced, 2 years now, but she doesn't accept it." Livia swallowed hard. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that the second I said her name, you'd walk away." She laughed bitterly. "So you thought hiding it would make me stay?" "Confused," he said quietly. "I just wanted more time." She looked up, blinking against the sunlight. "You don't lie to people you care about, David." "I didn't lie," he said. "I just didn't say it yet." "Same thing," she whispered. But she ended the call. And for the first time since she met him, she didn't want to see him again. Livia didn't go back to the office that day. She didn't answer Camilla's texts either. She went home, shut off her phone, curled into the couch, and let the silence wrap around her like armor. She had trusted him. Against all logic, against every instinct honed from years of disappointment, she had let herself believe in something impossible. He looked susceptible, and just when she let down her guard, reality had barged in, wearing heels and declaring herself his wife. The worst part wasn't that David had a past, it was that he had hidden it. She stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment. The way he'd kissed her, the way he'd looked at her on the plane, the laughter in Berlin, the softness in his voice when he said she wasn't just anything. Or had any of it been true? The next morning, she dragged herself out of bed, made coffee she didn't drink, and sat at the kitchen table, still wearing the same clothes. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. "David." "Missed call." "Damn a message." "Please. One conversation. Just one." She turned the phone face down. That afternoon, a knock sounded at the door. Livia didn't move at first, thinking it was a neighbor, but the knock came again, firm, hesitant, familiar. She stood slowly and opened it. David stood there, rain soaking the shoulders of his jacket, eyes tired but pleading. "You shouldn't be here," he said, "but I had to try." Livia crossed her arms. "Say what you need to say." He took a breath. "Her name is Vanessa. We were married for 5 years. The divorce was bitter. She never wanted it. I did. It's over legally. But not, apparently, in her mind." Livia's voice was flat. "You should have told me." "No," he said. "And I'm sorry. Truly. But I didn't hide it to manipulate you. I just liked the way you looked at me. Like I wasn't a man with a messy past." She frowned. "Everyone has a past, David. I could have handled the truth. What I can't handle is being blindsided in front of my coworkers." He nodded. "You're right. And I was wrong. I messed this up." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of the rain filled the space between them. Livia's voice broke. "I liked you. I still do. That's what makes this harder." David stepped forward. "Then don't walk away." "Hester," she whispered, "because if this is how it begins, what happens when it gets harder?" He looked gutted. She took a step back. "Goodbye, David." And she closed the door. Behind it, she pressed her forehead to the wood and let the tears fall. On the other side, David stood for a long time. Then he turned and walked away. For the first time in years, he felt completely, achingly lost. Livia had never known silence could be so loud. The days passed, blurred by coffee she didn't finish, work emails she barely answered, and long walks where her legs moved but her thoughts stayed behind. She couldn't stop hearing the woman's voice. "He's my husband." Couldn't stop wondering how much of David's charm had been rehearsed, how much of that kiss under Berlin lights had been real. She had put her heart on the line, again, and once more it had ended with a slammed door and bruised trust. Camila finally marched into her apartment 3 nights later, armed with takeout and frustration. "Healthy," she declared, kicking off her shoes. "Fine," Livia muttered. "You haven't returned my calls, you ghost your team at work, and I swear I saw you wear that same hoodie 4 days in a row. It's comfortable. It's concerning." Livia finally sighed and dropped onto the couch. "I really thought he was different, Camila." Camila sat beside her, opening the bag of food. "He might be, but even good people make terrible mistakes." Livia shook her head. "He lied. You withheld something he should have told you. That's not the same as betrayal." It felt like betrayal. Camila's voice softened. "You've been through so much. I get why this hurt deeper than most. But running away isn't protecting you anymore. It's keeping you from things that might be good." Livia stared ahead. "What if I let him back in and he breaks me worse next time?" "Then we glue you back together," Camila said. "That's what people who love you do." Meanwhile, across town, David was a shadow of himself. He couldn't concentrate during meetings, forgot to return calls, barely touched food. Lucas noticed first. "You okay, man?" David nodded without conviction. "I'm fine." "You look like someone ran over your heart." David gave a weak smile. "It's not that far off." He remembered the sound of the door closing in his face, the look in Livia's eyes, not anger, disappointment. It hurt worse. He stood in front of a mirror that night, staring at himself, at the man who built an empire but couldn't hold on to the only woman who ever made him feel like more than a CEO. And the truth hit him. He wasn't just sorry. He was ashamed. So the next morning, David called his lawyer. "I want it finalized," he said. "Finalized, David. You're legally divorced. I want it registered, stamped, filed again if it has to be. I want a restraining order if that's what it takes. I want her to know it's over." Understood. Then he made one more call. To Vanessa. David stood outside her apartment building with a bouquet of white lilies in hand. Livia's favorite, though she had never told him. He had remembered them from a throwaway comment she made in Berlin while passing a florist. The wind tugged at his coat, but he didn't move. Not until he was sure he wasn't bringing the polished CEO or the regretful ex-husband. This time, he came with nothing but the truth. He knocked. It took a minute. Then, another. And just when he was about to turn away, the door opened. Livia stood there in a sweatshirt, hair tied back, no makeup, eyes tired. For a second, she didn't say anything. David held out the flowers. "I thought about sending these, but I wanted to hand them to you myself." She didn't take them right away. "I'm not here to fix this with charm," he said. "I'm here to tell you what I should have said from the start." She leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. He took a breath. Vanessa was toxic, controlling. She made me feel like I owed her my success, like I was nothing without her. I stayed longer than I should have. I let her convince me I was lucky to have her, even when she was tearing me down. Livia's eyes softened just slightly. "I've divorced her 2 years ago," he continued. "But I never confronted her, not really. I avoided her. Let her run the narrative, until you." He looked down at the flowers, then back up at her. "You reminded me what it felt like to be seen again, to want something for no reason other than it made me feel." Her voice was soft. "You should have told me," he said, "and I'll regret that for a long time. But I'm telling you now because I've done everything to make sure that chapter is finally closed." He held out the flowers again. "I'm not asking you to forget, just Don't shut the door on something that never even had a chance. Livia hesitated, her fingers brushed the petals. And then she whispered, "You're impossible." He smiled. "You've said that before." "Still mad," she said. "But you're in." She stepped aside. "Come in." He followed her into the warmth of the apartment. It smelled like cinnamon and lemon. Familiar. Comforting. They sat on the couch, not too close. For a moment, there was only silence. But it wasn't the heavy kind. It was the kind that asked questions without words. He turned to her, more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "I don't have a grand speech. I don't even know what this is going to look like. But, if you let me, I want to find out. With you." Olivia looked at him. No flashbacks. No fear. Just the thrum of her heartbeat and the quiet certainty in his voice. She leaned in. And this time, when they kissed, there were no shadows. Only truth. Only choice. The company had never seen numbers like this. Since the German deal closed, shares rose. Clients flooded in, and praise echoed through every department. Headlines named David's firm one of the fastest-growing tech companies of the year. But in the middle of the excitement, David wasn't thinking about numbers. He was thinking about Livia. About the woman who once clutched his lap in terror on a flight. The woman who'd walked away and still come back. The woman who didn't just change his company's trajectory, she changed him. That morning, he stood in the mirror adjusting his tie for the quarterly presentation. But today, he didn't care about the charts or the applause. Because he wasn't just presenting strategy today. He was taking a risk that had nothing to do with business. Livia arrived late to the event, quietly slipping into a seat near the back. Camila sat beside her, elbowing her with a smirk. "He keeps looking toward the door." Livia tried not to smile. "That's not why I'm here." "You're not fooling anyone." The conference room buzzed with anticipation. Executives, analysts, and dozens of employees lined the seats. David took the stage, calm as ever, voice smooth and confident. He began with performance graphs, projections, new product launches, but even Livia, watching from the back, noticed something different. His focus wasn't on the crowd, it was somewhere else. Halfway through his speech, he paused. Then he closed the laptop, walked away from the podium, and picked up a small velvet box from the side table. The room fell silent. "All I know this isn't on the agenda," David began, walking slowly down the aisle. "But I've learned that the most important moments in life never are." Olivia froze. He kept walking. Toward her. "I've some great decisions in my career," he continued. "But the best one wasn't business." Camila gasped. "Livia?" He reached her row. And looked at her. "Lovis Leverars," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "You changed my life the moment you grabbed my lap instead of your seatbelt." Laughter rippled through the room, warm and surprised. David smiled, then dropped to one knee. "More than that. You challenged me. You saw past the job, past the headlines, and into the part of me I stopped sharing a long time ago. You're the only person I've ever been afraid to lose." Livia's eyes welled with tears. He opened the box. A ring shimmered inside. "I'm asking," he said softly, in front of everyone who thought I'd never fall for anyone but numbers and code. "Will you marry me?" Livia covered her mouth, stunned. The entire room held its breath. And then, through tears and a trembling smile, she nodded. The room erupted. Applause, whistles, cheers that echoed off the high glass walls. Camila was already sobbing and clapping at the same time. "I knew it!" she cried, hugging Livia from the side. "I freaking knew it!" Livia laughed through her tears as David slipped the ring onto her finger. His hands trembled slightly, but his smile didn't falter. When he stood, she wrapped her arms around him, and the entire room stood to it. Their and shouted, "Best merger announcement ever." Someone else added, "Forget the quarterly bonus. This is the real win." David looked down at her, forehead resting against hers, voice low enough for only her to hear. "Petty O'Brien, Who? I hope I didn't ruin your first work presentation. She laughed into his shoulder. You ruined it perfectly. After the crowd settled and the presentation moved to light refreshments and celebration, David pulled Livia aside, into his office. The door clicked shut behind them, but the energy of the moment still hummed in the air. He leaned against the glass wall, hands in his pockets, eyes on her. You're quiet, he said. Homicide still processing, she whispered, turning her hand to look at the ring again. I thought I'd have more time before a moment like this. I didn't want more time, he said simply. I almost lost you once because I waited. I'm not making that mistake again. She stepped closer, her voice softer now. You really had no idea that day on the plane, did you? I'd fall in love with a woman who didn't know how to work a seatbelt, he teased. She smiled. He grew serious again. No, I didn't know, but I hoped, from the second you turned red and ran off that flight, I hoped I'd see you again. Now we're here, she said, still amazed. He took her hand, pressed it to his chest. Livia, you're the only chaos I want in my life. She looked up at him, eyes shining. And you, the calm I never knew I needed. The office outside buzzed with congratulations and cake cutting, but in that moment, inside the glass walls, it was just them. No boardroom, no baggage, no walls. Just two people who once collided mid-air turbulence and now stood, side by side, choosing to build something steady. Together. The wedding was set in a rooftop garden in the heart of New York, where the skyline framed the altar like a painting and fairy lights twinkled above rows of white chairs. Camila wept the moment the music started. Don't judge me, she muttered, dabbing her eyes. It's allergies? Livia appeared at the end of the aisle, radiant in soft ivory, her hair swept back in gentle waves, the same shade of lipstick she wore the night David first kissed her. And yet, her heel caught the edge of the runner and she stumbled forward with a gasp. And the crowd inhaled. David grinned from the altar. Livia looked up, laughing through the flush on her cheeks. Guess I'm still keeping the tradition of crashing into your life. Camila cheered from the front row. Now it's officially a wedding. Livia steadied herself and walked the rest of the way, eyes locked on the man waiting for her. David, standing tall in a sleek tux, heart visibly in his eyes. The officiant began, but the ceremony was already its own kind of sacred, personal, honest, and full of shared looks and unsaid laughter. When it was time for vows, David took her hands, his voice rich but gentle. First time we met, you grabbed the wrong thing, on a plane, in front of strangers, and I've never been more thankful for turbulence. The guests laughed warmly. Camila nearly fell out of her chair. David continued. You've challenged me, saved me, surprised me, and reminded me that love isn't neat code or perfect logic. It's messy, terrifying, and the most beautiful thing I've ever built. Livia wiped a tear, then smiled through it. Turn, she said. I thought I was running toward a new job, a new city. I didn't know I was crashing straight into my future. If I'd known that panic attack on that plane would bring me to you, I'd have panicked sooner. After again. And this time, even David had to look down to compose himself. She took a breath, her voice steadier now. No one else can promise anything. Princess Camilla, the great ladies, and to always choose you, even on the hard ones. Especially on the hard ones. They exchanged rings, trembling fingers brushing. The words were spoken. The kiss was deep, certain, and filled with the quiet power of two people who had fallen, fought, and found their way back. They walked down the aisle, hand in hand, David grinning, Livia beaming, petals flying around them. And for once, everyone agreed, the best merger the company had ever seen wasn't signed in ink. It was sealed with a kiss. The honeymoon was a slow dream stretched across oceans. In Santorini, they danced barefoot on sun-warmed terraces. In Kyoto, he pulled her close under cherry blossoms as cameras flashed and tourists stared. But Livia never noticed, because every time she looked at David, the world narrowed to one truth. This was hers now, this life. They held hands on morning hikes, shared stolen kisses in empty elevators, and curled into each other after long days filled with adventure and peace. And somewhere between room service and rainstorms, they stopped needing to explain themselves. The silences were safe now, full. Back in New York, life didn't slow. It evolved. David added Livia's name to the company registry, not just as his wife, but as his co-head of cybersecurity. It shocked the board, until Livia walked into the room with a whiteboard marker, broke down their firewall vulnerabilities in 10 minutes, and left a dozen tech execs speechless. "She doesn't just belong here," David said after the meeting. "She built half of what saved us." They became a team at work and at home. Morning coffees blurred into late-night debugging sessions. Sometimes they argued over code syntax, sometimes they kissed over it, but always they circled back. They learned how to hold space for the brilliance in each other. Camila visited often, still nosy, still loyal. She joked that she wanted stock options for matchmaking services. David offered her lifetime gelato instead. Then came the quieter days, the ones that mattered even more. Rainy Sundays wrapped in blankets and spreadsheets, mismatched socks and kitchen disasters, kisses between teeth brushing and calls with investors. The kind of days that wouldn't make headlines but made a life. One evening, Livia stood by the nursery window of their apartment, holding a small, soft baby blanket in her hands. It had tiny airplanes stitched into the fabric, blue on white. Her fingers moved over the embroidery, her lips lifting into a smile. David leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her. "You're quiet," he said. Livia turned toward him, just thinking. "Asia." She held up the blanket. "Next time we fly, you want the aisle seat?" She shook her head, eyes twinkling. "No, I just want dibs on the window." David walked to her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "As long as you keep grabbing me," he whispered into her hair, "you can have any seat you want." Livia laughed, leaned back into him, and pressed the blanket between them. Any life growing quietly. A love built not from perfection, but from panic, patience, and persistence. And a legacy, stitched together by a single, unforgettable moment in the sky.